position and they shifted, and you get that alarm that keeps saying there's a buckle or a hatch that's open, and you know they're all closed, but it won't let you do anything. If you press and hold this button, it will override that, and the patient will come back to the center. So get them over to the center where you can get the alarm to go off and then crank them in. Does that make sense? They're prone. You keep getting that error. You cannot move them unless you do the emergency release. So if you press and hold, CPR will override your error and you'll be able to close the doors. Lastly, the patient is over and you have had to use the manual proning lever, or you have a power outage or something breaks on the circuit board and you manually have to turn the patient over. Historically, you couldn't do that. It's stuck at 62 degrees and you had to swap the unit out. Now we have this switch in here that overrides the machine locking you out. So if your patient's on their back and you have to quickly get them over, or say there's a natural disaster, you've got to get them over in the hallway and you have no battery backup and they have to go back prone and you have no power, you can manually turn them over. So one person on either side, takes 3 people to do it. So, and then one person come here. So you're going to come to the foot of the bed here. You're going to pull the emergency release, which is here. So you're going to release it here, okay? You're going to say, is the patient secure?
Is the patient secure?
Is the patient secure?
Yes, the patient's secure.
Yes.
Which direction are we proning in? Because you're going to be down here like, which direction are we going? Which direction are we going?
We're going to go counterclockwise.
Okay, so counterclockwise,
Okay.
okay? So you're going to pull this, release this, pull the lock pin. This is going to be tie wrap shut. You're going to break this door open.
Okay.
Lift this, and I'll let y'all do it too. Lift this up, okay? And so prone patient.
Do I hold it? Or
Yes, hold it up the whole time. Okay, all right. Now bring this most to the center. I'm going to re-engage this right here. Let that go. Hit cancel up there. And then check tubing, airway, head support. And if you had power, you could just start going back, okay? So if it was a user error, which I've had happen before, where they manually supine the patient, and this hatch was still open, it would not let you turn the patient over. So there's a hatch that's open. When you have a 300-pound patient in here, and they're supine, lying on that hatch, there's no way you're going to get the hatch closed. So I've been in that position before, under the bed before, with the skirt on, trying to get the door shut. Okay, so if that happens, you can just override it. Okay.
Okay.
So same thing. Bring the patient back again, back flat on their back, using that knob. Press and hold
Do I
that
need
knob.
to pull that?
No, it's already done. So press and hold. No, this one right here.
CPR.
So the CPR button. We're just going to bring it back over a different way. Some way you haven't done it before. Typically, people use this. Okay. So now, y'all come down and we'll look at the foot of the bed, how to do that if you have to use it. Which we did down the hall. We had a problem with that bed down the hall, and we had to manually turn it. Because the sensor, there was something wrong with the sensor. Go to the bar and I stuck a fork in it. Fixed
Okay, so you
it.
pull this
Okay,
up.
right.
And then this lever, you pull it up.
Right, and then you disengage right here.
Okay.
Pull that,
Here.
disengage it, release it. Pull your lock pin out, lift this up, and then turn the patient, okay?
Okay.
All right, once you get the patient turned over, check tubing, check airway, check head support, but first you have to re-engage it, okay? Okay, perfect. All right, so now it no longer has control of us at all, because the way we would mitigate that is that we would swap the units out. And I kept telling corporate, the patients are too sick. Our mitigation is not a viable option. You need to come and see what happens. So we set up a sim lab. We invited all those people into a usability study, and the legal and regulatory people totally freaked out because our dummy was dying in the sim lab. And I was like, welcome to our world, except for it's not a dummy, it's a real patient, and we can't transfer these patients off. They almost die when we transfer them on. That was back before 12 to 24 hours of proning, right? But they put them on day 8 when every organ system had failed. That's where I started, just begging people, please do it earlier, please do it earlier, please do it earlier. Now they do it earlier. So most of our patients this past flu season went on, before they were on CVHD, CRT, they were on for an average of, a lot of times, maybe 4 days, where H1N1 3 years ago, the average length of stay was 14 to 16 days. Some people 21 days, but the average length of stay in the ICU is much longer as well. So earlier interventions, better outcomes, patients were coming off in 4 to 5 days. We had some outliers 7 days, but with the same type of illness, 3 years ago, patients were in for 2 weeks at a time on the Rotoprone. So The evidence is supporting earlier intervention, and your physicians have always been proners, but they even now are proning earlier. 60% 5-PEEP is an indication that the patient should be looked at differently. No ventilator can get secretions out of the lungs, period. There's nothing you can do with the ventilator to get rid of, to mobilize secretions. That's a homeopathic positional change, just simple. And then you change the whole dynamic in the lung, which I'm going to come back in March and lecture on the pathophysiology part of why does prone positioning work. And just in the past year, I've put 4 pieces of evidence in that lecture. And so now it's a 2 CE program that just talking about the Surviving Sepsis campaign, the New England Journal of Medicine article, the Berlin Consensus, how we define ARDS has changed, and now the Harvard study looking at the same patient population but using low tidal volume ventilation, which is standard of care. So lots of cool stuff. Questions? Comments? Yes, sir.
So going back to the CPR, when it comes to patient coding and we need to do CPR, rather than pressing the button and waiting for it to go, if the patient's secured and all the hatches are secured, wouldn't it be faster to release the bed and manually turn it?
It's actually fast. It's just as fast because by the time you get down there, pull that, you could have already pushed this button. This button has the patient over 28 seconds.
Okay.
Even if you have to close the doors, like if you close them really quickly, but even if it takes a minute, the risk you run with pulling that if you don't have to is if you've gone down clockwise and you're in the middle of a code situation, you just continue all the way in your turn clockwise and you've turned the patient 360 degrees. You can extubate the patient, you can pull the lines out, you can snap the belt inside of this unit. If it goes 361 degrees, there's a ribbon cable inside of there that snaps, and then you're done. Plus, if you extubate the patient.
Yeah.
So it seems like that would be faster, but literally, if you close the doors and hit CPR immediately as people are closing the doors, you can get over it between 28 and 32 seconds. Had a group of physicians that were manual proners at the chest conference this past year, and they're like, we manually prone, we don't need that piece of equipment. And one of the physicians got in, I packed her in, and used the manual, had her partner use the manual proning device. She was over in 28 seconds. She was like, oh my gosh. She goes, I got to tell you, our outcomes are decent, but when we have a patient code, she said sometimes it takes us 5 minutes to turn the patient over because it takes 6 to 8 people to turn the patient. They don't have a tube management system, so you have to be able to manage all those tubes. It's easy if it's a kiddo. That's why they do it all the time in pediatric patients. You can just flip a kid, but an adult with all those lines hooked up to CVVHD, CRRT, whatever, with all that stuff, it's scary. So manually, if you can't, give it to go, pull it, turn them over. Just look where the vent is and know that that's probably the direction that you went in. But a lot of times you forget to do that. So the risk of doing that is pulling the lines out anyway. But then you're in big trouble. What else? I hope it was helpful. It's almost impossible to get through all of it in an hour. I thought I had 2 hours this morning. So everybody's looking at the clock. I think I'm going over, but it's only